Bruce, thanks so much for being here. Today we focused on water quality. In the West, the American West, we hear a ton about water quantities, and for good reason. But at least the public hears less about water quality. Can you talk about why it's also important to focus on quality in addition to quantity?
Well, quality is really important because all kinds of illnesses and diseases and other things can happen to people if you don't pay attention to the quality of the water. In the West, we were lucky for a lot of years because we were able to take water from the Sierras and bring it down and through canals and irrigation systems, and we didn't have to worry too much about the purity of the water. But as our urban and suburban areas have grown, we're increasingly using different sources of water. Some of them are stormwater and recycled water. Some of them are surface water that has become, cloudy or has picked up contaminants along the way. So with the growth of the Western population and Western commerce in the American West, we have to pay much more attention to the quality of our water than we had to in the 19th century. And so yes, quantity matters, and in many ways it determines the strategies with respect to quality, because if we're going to use more recycled water, then we obviously have to pay attention to whether those processes are working well and to get them implemented in the first place.
Thank you. So we were also focused today on finding places where tighter cooperation between people from different disciplines or different sectors could lead to better outcomes. Can you talk a bit about the importance of doing so in the context of water challenges?
Just generally, it's hard to get people from disciplines in highly, sophisticated research universities to talk to each other because our amount of knowledge in each one of these areas gets deeper every year. Caltech's always been on the forefront of mixing people together. The social sciences division here at Caltech, but also the smallness of the community has promoted for a long time interactions between social scientists and natural scientists. I think it's a very important discussion to have because some of the things that social scientists know can affect the types of technologies that people develop, whether there's going to be public acceptance of those, for example. There are certain things that the public may not accept. The cost. It's all well and good to develop a really nice technologies, but in the reality of the world, it may be that they're too expensive or that there's too expensive for certain segments of the population. So the solutions that scientists develop can be aided and assisted by information about what's acceptable, what's feasible in terms of human behavior. Also, what policies will implement those things. But at the same time, social scientists can benefit from listening to natural scientists because the reality is that the policy has to be informed by the facts of the natural world and what technologies are feasible. So the conversation has to be both ways. And to some degree, a lot of universities have achieved some degree of success on this, but I think there's a long way to go on this. We have to fight the natural tendency to create these silos and to constantly think about ways to get people to interact more carefully across these disciplinary lines.
Definitely. And one of the ways that we're trying to do that here on campus is through the Center on Science, Society, and Public Policy. Can you talk about the role that a center like this could play on a university campus?
So the centers, not just on this campus, but on many campuses, are the key to interdisciplinary work because they bring scholars together for sharing information about their research, funding policy projects that they might do on either policy or in technology, and convenings like this one today, where people actually share their thoughts about broader issues and about their own research. So I think that the centers have an incentive to do that in a way that the departments don't. The departments really have to focus on their teaching mission. They have to focus on recruitment. They have to focus on retaining people. But they don't have a perspective and an incentive of thinking about the other departments. And the centers are what bring people together to have these kinds of conversations and to do these kinds of projects.
Awesome. And our last question is, what are some broad areas do you think that you learned today or that you came into the conversation thinking about where better water quality measurements could lead to better management decisions?
There were a lot of things that were eye-opening to me. Certainly the discussion about the PFAS and the plastics and the the types of steps and the expense that we're going to have to invest to take account of that we've been using these things for quite a while, that they really have a substantial effect on health through drinking water. So there's, I think, much more of a consciousness among the American public about contaminants in the air, whether it was tobacco smoke 25 or 30 years ago, whether it's wildfire smoke in the last 5 years, whether it's pollution and smog in the LA Basin area, which was a really big deal 20 years ago here, 30 years ago. But the fact that there being contamination in the water, as I said, was not really in our legacy, because the water was coming down from the Sierras. We didn't have the intensive buildup of commerce and residences that the East Coast had, but now that's caught up to us. And so I think just discovering how hard it is and how expensive it is to keep track of all the different contaminants that come from the different sources. And it's just, in some ways, a little overwhelming when you think about the policy that's needed, but and the measurements that are needed. And so I think that was very eye-opening today to hear all that.